So the topic that I was given today actually is greed. The concept of greed and this idea of having an obsession over being wealthy, having an obsession over a certain status, over a certain career, over a certain amount of money. And so what I want to start off with is two questions that I want you guys to think about, both in the context of today's lecture, but also in the context, inshallah, of every lecture regarding Tazkiyah that comes your way. The whole concept of Tazkiyah is all about the heart, right? It's all about trying to understand what really is at the center of your heart and trying to purify your heart such that it does everything for the sake of Allah and it looks at the world through a lens of Islam. How do I know, and how do you know, though, what is actually at the center of my heart? How do I know if my intention is pure? How do I know if I'm sincere? How do I know if I have a problem or an illness with my heart, or if my heart is pure and clean and healthy? There is a question that you can ask yourself that I encourage you to ask yourself every single day. And based on how you answer this question, you will know what is at the center of your heart, and you will know whether or not you have some work to do. And that question is, what do you think about most in the day? What do you think about most in a day? What thought just sits there all day long and you are constantly thinking about it, and it is the reason that is motivating all of your behaviors. It is the reason that you wake up in the morning. It is the reason that you work hard. It is the reason for everything that you do. What is that thing? Ideally, in a world where all of us have clean, pure hearts, that thing that we think about most in the day would be the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, would be the day of judgment, would be the fact that this life isn't it, and there's a whole world after this, and this is just a place for us to pass through, but our final abode is actually the next life, right? Ideally, that should be the answer, but what you will probably realize as you answered that question yourself, honestly today, is that that probably was not what you think about most in a day. And for most of us, that answer might have been something along the lines of, well, I think about my studying, I think about school every day, or I think about my job, I think about the work I have to do every day, or how I have to show up to work tomorrow, or I think about my family, I think about my spouse, I think about my children, right? And so those are the things that often we think about most in a day. And especially in the culture and society that we live in today, more often than not, most of us are going to answer that question, something that's related to money. Either I am in school so I can get a degree so I can make a lot of money, or I'm in a job so I can work hard so I can make a lot of money, or I want to transfer to a new job, or I want to get a promotion, or I want the next big thing, right? Or I want the next big house and that house needs more money, or I want the next nice car and that car needs more money, right? So most of us, that center has something to do with money. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. And so I told you I was going to ask you two questions. So the first one, I want you to remember this. What do you think about most in the day? And the second thing I want you to think about, the second question is, what makes you valuable in this world? What makes you important? What is the thing that actually brings a person value and adds to you and adds to your ranks? Versus what kind of things don't matter? And when you think about the society that we have been placed in, when you think about who are the most impactful, influential people of the world, in our world, technically, they're the ones with the most money, right? They're the ones with the most power, the most influence, right? I bet you guys can think of names of people, I don't even have to tell you. But it's the people with those high-paying jobs or those prestigious careers, right? That is what our society tells us is valuable. And that's why it is so hard, and it can be so hard for us to fight off this disease, which is truly a disease, which is the love of money, the love of wealth, the love of possessions, the love of anything really of this dunya that goes beyond or goes extreme. And so I'm reminded of a really, really, really beautiful quote by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. This quote, he said at the time that he was gaining the keys to open Jerusalem. Jerusalem was now about to be under Islamic command during his Khalifa. It's a long story, but to summarize the quote that I want you guys to take from it, he says, نحن قوم أعزنا الله بالإسلام فإن ابتغينا العزة في غيره أذلنا الله. He says, we were the most humiliated people on earth, and Allah honored us with Islam. Meaning, the thing that brings us honor is Islam. And then he continues to say, and if we try to seek honor from anything else, if we try to seek honor through money, if we try to seek honor through status, through a degree, through a job, whatever it may be, then Allah will disgrace us. And he really summarizes it beautifully, which is, if a person can make their center all about the pleasure of Allah, if a person can look inward and be content within themselves and with Allah, and if a person can turn off the noise that we see from society, and we'll talk about this in more depth in a minute, then that is how you achieve true honor. That is how you become truly valuable. And that's how you see, and all of you guys are seeing it on your phones today, the people of Gaza who have no money, who have no food, who have no shelters, who have lost family. All of the things that we said modern day society tells us is valuable, the people of Gaza have none of it. Yet they are the most honorable people on earth right now. And that is because they have Allah. They have a contentment in Allah's plan. They have a trust and a belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they have the ability to look past material things of the dunya. So our goal today, inshallah, is going to be to talk about this idea of what in Arabic is called hirs. It's greed. It's this insatiable desire for wealth or status or material things. It's the constant chasing for more and more and more. It's the inability to just be happy. It's the inability to just be content with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already given you. And so that's kind of what's going to be the focus of our lecture. So inshallah, what I'm going to do is try to split this into 3 parts. In the first one, we'll kind of talk about the disease in depth. We'll talk about what is it, what causes it, what are symptoms that I should be screening myself for to know if I suffer from this disease, if my heart has this disease. That's going to be kind of the first part. Then inshallah, in the second part, we will talk about ways to rid ourselves of this disease. So what kind of things can we do to purify our heart from this? And then anybody who knows me knows that I like to throw in psychology at some point in a lecture. So at the end, inshallah, we'll talk about even the psychological implications of everything we're talking about. So this concept of hirs, this concept of greed, what causes it? Why is it that some hearts may be prone to this disease? Why is it that some hearts may have an attachment to material things at the center of it? The number one and probably most obvious reason is a love of the dunya. The dunya was created in a way to be very enticing. We see big shiny things, we're like, ooh, I want that. Or you see your neighbor has something bigger or better than you, and you're like, ooh, I want that, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ وَالْقَنَاطِيرِ الْمُقَنْطَرَةِ مِنَ الذَّهَبِ وَالْفِضَّةِ وَالْخَيْلِ الْمُسَوَّمَةِ وَالْأَنْعَامِ وَالْحَرْثِ ذَلِكَ مَتَاعُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَاللَّهُ عِنْدَهُ حُسْنُ الْمَآبِ, which translates to the enjoyment of worldly desires, women, children, gold, silver, horses, cattle, fertile land. All of that in modern time might have been horse and cattle. Now is like Lamborghinis and nice cars, right? Or nice houses, or big things. All of these things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that these have been made appealing to us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that these are the pleasures of this worldly life, but with Allah is the final destination. That these were the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in front of us, and part of them being in this world in front of us is that we are going to have like this natural desire towards it. We are going to see the big house and we're going to say, wow, I want that. We're going to see the nice car, we're going to say, wow, I want that. There's just something in our nafs that pushes us to want that thing. It's a shahwa, right? It's a desire. But the ones of us that can be really successful, and we'll talk about this, are the ones who know how to control that part of us. That the part of you that tells you, I want more, there should be another part that counteracts that says, no, look at everything you already have, right? And we're going to talk about that. But the number one thing that causes people to feel greedy is the fact that the dunya was designed with these distractions in place. They're almost part of the test, right? We know the entire purpose of us being here is to be tested, right? And to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts these things in front of us in a way as a test. So some of us are going to fail the test, and we're going to fall into the trap of just that cycle of I want more, I want more, I want more. And some of us will be able to have a clear lens to be able to see, no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me so much, I'm content with what's in front of me. I don't need to chase the next thing. So that's the first thing, is the love of the dunya. That's a part of what causes this disease. Another thing that causes this disease is a fear of poverty. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in the Quran, الشيطان يعيدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء والله يعيدكم مغفرة منه وفضلا والله واسع عليم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that shaitan threatens you with a loss of money. Shaitan makes you feel scared when you don't have money, or makes you feel scared that you may at one point lose money, which is what causes some people to really hold on to their wealth, right? Like maybe they're just constantly saving because they're terrified for what's going to happen to me if I don't have money. What value will I have anymore in this world if I don't have money? Who am I without money? Who am I without my title? So the shaitan comes and makes us afraid, to the point that there are certain people that are tested with a loss of money, and shaitan will come to them and make them feel like it's the absolute lowest point of their world and there is no turning back, versus people who have faith can interact with money in such a surface level way where they understand that rizq only comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they're able to say, well, the money was in Allah's hands all along anyway. It never was in my hands. It never was mine to begin with. So when the money comes and goes, it's easier for them to accept the go and to welcome the come. Versus somebody who their entire worth is placed into how much money is in my bank account. Well, you better bet that when that person loses a little bit, they're going to be freaking out, right? And that's all from the tricks of shaitan, is to make us be afraid of being poor, is to make us fear that we're going to lose our money, and that leads people to hoard it, that leads people to not give it for the sake of Allah, right? Etc. The next thing that can cause this disease, and this is one of the big ones that I want to harp on, is comparison. Comparison. It might be the worst thing that has been working against us in modern day society. And why is that? Because social media and the way that we live today puts everybody's life on blast right in front of you. All you have to do is be sitting in your house, minding your own business. You scroll and you're like, oh wow, that was a nice, really big party. I couldn't afford a party like that, right? Or wow, look at that wedding, or look at that car, or look at whatever, right? I am convinced that people were happier before social media. I'm convinced that people who didn't know what their neighbors had were significantly happier. Because all they saw was what they have, and what they had was enough for them, and that's it. End of story. Is what I have meeting my needs? Yes? Then that's it. End of story, right? Versus now it's, alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us all in this room with way more than we need. Yet we also now see people next to us who Allah has blessed with different things, and we're like, oh my God, I don't have that. And then you feel less than for some reason. And then that sort of triggers your, well, I need to be just like that, or I need to have that. And then you run into that chase of, okay, well, that means I need more money. That means I got to work more, and I need an extra job, etc., right? And so, subhanAllah, this concept of comparison is really, really dangerous, and something that we'll talk about. But in order to cleanse ourselves, we really have to figure out how we can block out extra noise from entering into our soul. Our soul needs to be able to not look at other people's lives. And you guys know, and I don't need to tell you this, but I will remind you, just remember that social media is all a lie. That people in their moments, they are showing you the absolute best 30 seconds of their life. And you're not necessarily seeing the other things that are going on behind the door, behind closed doors. And I will also tell you, from somebody who has talked to people in the community for a long time, people are really, really, really good at faking it. I have had people in my halaqah over the years who externally, they come in with the bubbliest smile, they're so happy, they got the designer bags, the nice car, you think everything is working for them. Then they come up to you and tell you how broken their family is, how their parents are going through a divorce, how sick their aunt is, how someone in their family just passed away. We have to be sure in knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fair, and that Allah never gives one person everything. It's just not His way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fair and balanced. You are going to always have something that the person you're comparing yourself to does not have. And you need to be able to focus on that thing. Well, maybe this person has more money than me, but alhamdulillah, I have my health. Maybe that person has more money than me, but alhamdulillah, I have a family that is not broken, right? These are the thoughts that we should be telling ourselves. And then the final reason that can cause someone to fall into this trap or this illness of greed is lack of trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being ar-Razzaq. When we talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being ar-Razzaq, that means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is responsible for your provisions. The number in your bank account is completely destined by Allah. It has nothing, very little, to do with your hard work, your degree, your efforts. But it is all about how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to give you and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with. And realize that there are different forms of rizq. Rizq is not all just money. Rizq can also be good companionship, good parents, a good spouse, righteous children. Rizq can come in 1,000 different forms that are not a dollar sign, right? So remembering that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives and is the one who takes. And that it has nothing to do with you, really. And we'll talk about this, because a trick of the shaitan is to sort of make you feel like, well, because you worked so hard, then you made all this money. So now the money that you have is somehow because of your efforts and not because of Allah. And shaitan will trick you, and then that cycle will get you, well, if my efforts yield money, then if I multiply my efforts, then that means I multiply my money. And that's not the case, right? And you can hear story after story of person after person who maybe you expect to have this really high degree that's going to make them a bunch of money, and they end up losing a job and now they have nothing. Versus a person that maybe you didn't think was going to amount to anything, was not going to have a lot of money, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses to bless them with rizq, and boom, they have more money than the other guy, right? So this concept of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being ar-Razzaq, He is the provider, He is the one that determines how much or how little each of us has and in what categories we have them. So just to summarize those 4 things. Number 1 was love of dunya. Number 2 was fear of poverty. Number 3 was comparison with other people. And number 4 was a lack of trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being ar-Razzaq. Now here's the part where it gets a little bit more personal for you. And this is the symptoms of it. And this is the part where I kind of stop talking about people in space and start talking about you. This is the part where you screen yourself. This is the part where I'm going to list to you symptoms and you are to see whether or not you have any of these things. And we're not here to judge, and you're not going to put it on a board. No one's going to know, right? But it's for you to be able to assess for yourself, do you have this disease? Do I need to work on this? Or am I in the clear for right now? So I will start off with a hadith from Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, and I'm going to come back to this hadith again later, but the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if the son of Adam had a valley full of gold, he would like to have 2 valleys, for nothing fills his mouth except dust, and Allah forgives him who repents to him. This is basically a summary of a person who, and this is one sign that you have this disease, which is no matter how much you have, you are always craving more. So maybe you made dua to Allah, oh Allah, I want this car, let's say. Allah gave you the car, you're happy for like a week, and then your mind goes, well, no, I want the next one. No, I want the next model, the newest model, the 2025, the 2026, right? And you can plug in anything there. But one symptom of this disease is that you are unable to be happy with what you have. And you are constantly looking and chasing after the next bigger, better thing. That's the first thing. The second symptom of this disease is this concept of hoarding and counting money. Like you have it and you're just hanging on to it. You're too scared to let it go. You are not giving it in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are quite literally just stashing it because you're scared of what life could be like had you not had it. Now, I want to make a distinction here. I'm not saying that we shouldn't all be saving money for a rainy day. We should be doing that, okay? That's not what I'm talking about here. This is your basic needs are met. You have a safety account, right? You have some money set aside for a rainy day. Inshallah, we never have it, but if you need it, you have it. That's fine. But then the money that's extra beyond that you feel yourself constantly looking at your bank account, am I up or am I down? Like, am I okay? How much money do I have? And if you feel like if you drop below a certain number that something in your heart changes, then that's a symptom of this disease, right? So this concept of hoarding, constantly counting, constantly like sort of over obsessing with how much money is in my bank account. And then the next thing is sort of like a feeling of emptiness. Despite the fact that maybe you have things in front of you, but you still feel empty. Maybe you have the big house, maybe you have the nice car, maybe you have the nice job, right? But something in you still feels incomplete. Something in you feels though, even though you have the things, items right in front of you that you've wanted, you're really not satisfied or you're not really whole. So it's almost like you are comparing or making it such that in order to feel whole, I need more. And because you don't have the more, you're constantly feeling incomplete. So the feeling of emptiness associated with that is another symptom of this disease. And then the last one that I'll mention here is a person who, because of how much they're obsessing over making money or being in a certain career or having a certain degree, that they start to neglect their obligations of Allah. An example of this would be some guy is working so hard in his business, he wants to make more money, that he misses Jum'ah, he misses Salat al-Jum'ah, or he misses one of the other fara'id, right? Or someone has made money, but they're not giving it in zakat, right? So the money is there, but they're not giving it in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then once your over-obsession over wealth status starts to distract you from obeying Allah and fulfilling your basic commandments. That's another symptom of this disease. What I'm going to tell you now is a hadith Qudsi, which I will preface by saying that this is a da'if hadith, which means it is not sahih, it's not 100% authentic. However, there is still a lot that can be taken from it, and I personally like to reflect on this a lot. So hadith Qudsi means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one talking, as opposed to a hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in this hadith Qudsi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, من كانت الآخرة همه جعل الله غناه في قلبه وجمع له شمله وأتته الدنيا وهي راغمة. Which translates to, whoever's hem means their focus, their worry, the thing that's at the center of their heart. Remember how I asked you that question in the beginning? Whoever's answer to that question is the akhirah, is Allah, is the pleasure of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, جَعَلَ اللَّهُ غِنَاهُ فِي قَلْبِهِ, which means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place wealth in that person's heart. وَجَمَعَ لَهُ شَمْلَهُ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will organize all of his affairs. وَأَتَتْهُ الدُّنْيَا وَهِيَ رَاغِمَةٌ. And the world will come after that person whether it wants to or not. What that means is, in easy terms, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, for the person who focuses on their akhirah, Allah will take care of your dunya for you. Allah will make it such that the dunya is forced towards you even if it doesn't want to. Which means you will be given the things of the dunya that you're looking for, that you need, that you seek. Why? Because your focus was not on it. Your focus was not on the dunya. Your focus was on the akhirah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also talks about how that person is going to feel rich within their heart. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be rich in their bank account. But they're going to feel rich in their heart. And what that means is, regardless of what is in front of my eyes, I feel rich inside. Whether I have it or I don't, I still feel rich. Because my richness is fueled by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in this hadith, Allah gives us the opposite example. He says, وَمَنْ كَانَتِ الدُّنْيَا هَمُّهُ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ فَقْرَهُ بَيْنَ عَيْنَيْهِ وَفَرَّقَ عَلَيْهِ شَمْلَهُ وَلَمْ يَأْتِهِ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَا قُدِّرَ لَهُ. Which translates to, and whoever makes the dunya the goal. Whoever's answer to the question in the beginning was something dunya related, meaning the center of your heart is a dunyawi thing, is a materialistic thing. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that what He will do is He will cause faqr, poverty, to be right in front of his eyes. The metaphor here is so strong. What it means when someone's poverty is in front of their eyes, meaning whatever else is in front of them, they could have all of the things, they could have the nice cars, the nice job, whatever is the case, they will still only see poverty. Because what's right in front of their eyes is poverty. It means even if it's right in front of them, they're only going to see poverty. Even when they have it all, they're still only going to see poverty. They're still going to feel less than. They're still going to feel that emptiness that we talked about. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَفَرَّقَ عَلَيْهِ شَمْلَهُ, which means the opposite of the beginning person, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will kind of scatter his affairs. Meaning, and I'm sure many of us can relate to this feeling, where this person will feel like a hamster on a wheel. Like they are constantly chasing towards something, but they will never actually get it. And that is because Allah quite literally forces the dunya out of that person's direction. So you can keep chasing, but it's never going to come to you, right? And that's because your focus was all about the dunya. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends it by saying, وَلَمْ يَأْتِهِ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَا قُدِّرَ لَهُ, which means, and even after all that chasing, and that feeling like you're a hamster on a wheel, that you're still not going to get more than what Allah has destined for you. That you could work as many hours as you want, and you could bust your butt as much as you want, and you could, have that feeling of like, oh, I want more as much as you want. But if your heart is centered around something of the dunya, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will still only give you what He wrote for you all along. So it's not like that worry over the dunya is actually going to produce more fruits of this dunya. So I think that's a powerful thing to think about, right? In summary, is if you focus on Allah, Allah will focus on your dunya for you. If you prioritize Allah, if you prioritize the Quran, if you prioritize your salah, if you prioritize all the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made mandatory upon us, you will literally see Allah send the dunya your way. You will get opportunities you never thought you would get. You will get job offers you never thought you would get. You will find like barakah in your time. You will find blessings in your children, in your spouse. And it's true, like true story, okay? Trust me on that. I'm going to tell you a story of a person in the Quran whose name is Qarun. Has anybody heard the name Qarun? Okay. I will try to summarize his story for you for the sake of time, but if you want to reference it in more detail, it's in Surah Al-Qasas. Qarun was a man he was in some way related to Musa alayhi salam. He was from Bani Israel. And when he was young, he grew up with faith. He grew up with belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as he started to get older and smarter, he started to become wealthier and wealthier. And in the beginning, he recognized that his wealth was all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the beginning, he would give it in charity. And in the beginning, he would show up for people. He would take care of people, etc., etc. Until he hit a point that was kind of like a turning point in his wealth, where he multiplied his wealth. Like he was extra wealthy. And when he got to that point of extra wealth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes in the Quran the amount of wealth that he had. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that holding the keys of his wealth, like just one key of, let's just say like one piece of his gold, holding just one, would break the backs of a strong man So that's how much wealth, the Islam gives, or the Quran gives us like a little illustration of how much that means, okay? So that's a lot of wealth. When he got to the point where his wealth was that much, that plentiful, that heavy, that's when his attitude towards his wealth began to change. That's when he started saying things like, well, Allah gave this to me because I worked hard for it. Therefore, I deserve this. And instead of it being Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the one that has provided it for me, therefore I should give it for the sake of Allah and I should be thankful to Allah for it, it started being, well, I'm just going to keep working harder, and because I'm so smart and because I'm so good at what I do, that I'm going to be able to generate more and more wealth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it such that he was able to generate more and more wealth. He was warned by the people around him, be careful. Make sure that you use this wealth for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he ignored them. Until he got to a point where then he started to flaunt his wealth around. He became in a position of power and he used it to harm people. He kind of stirred envy and hatred among people. And one day he decided to like really put on a show. He put on his nicest, I don't know, we'll say thobe, all of his jewels, all of his stuff riding behind him. And he walked out in front of all of the people and he kind of was like showing it off. To the point where Allah, by the way, all of this is mentioned word for word almost in the Quran if you want to reference it. To the point where people who are watching Qarun, surrounded by all this wealth, verbalize, and their words are in the Quran, Ya laytana mithlu ma utiya Qarun. I wish that I had what Qarun has. I wish that I would be able to have the amount of wealth that he has. By the way, all of us have in some point said or thought something like that. While you were scrolling one day, I'm sure you saw something. And in your mind or in your heart somewhere, you thought to yourself, man, I wish that I would have had something like that, right? And so in that moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the earth to open up and swallow him and all of his wealth right in front of the eyes of the people who just wished for that wealth. Imagine if you were scrolling on like social media and you saw somebody had this like giant wedding and you were like, man, I wish I would have had a wedding like that. And then all of a sudden, live on social media, Allah just opens the earth and takes in everybody who's in that wedding. Like imagine how you're going to feel watching that play out in front of you, right? So that's what happened. And then the people who wished for what Qarun had, they basically are like dumbfounded. They're like, oh my God, Allah could have chosen to swallow us the same way he swallowed Qarun. And then Qarun became an example for the rest of the people around him and for the rest of mankind till this day of how dangerous it can be to flaunt your wealth or to attribute your wealth to your own self, right? So this is an example in the Quran of how a person who, when they were given a lot from Allah, became arrogant with it, flaunted it in front of people, disrespected people, mistreated people, did not give it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done to him. There are other examples of that in the Quran. There's like 2 or 3 other stories. For the sake of time, I'm just going to move forward. But that's like kind of a big, strong example that you can keep in your mind. So now that we've kind of talked about what causes this disease and how do I know if this disease is within me, and I've given you an example of a big bad guy who had this disease and you saw what happened to him, right? So now let's figure out how do we actually cure ourselves of this disease if we found that our heart does truly have it in it. So the first thing that I will mention here is a hadith from the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he says that when a man is carried to his grave, this person is followed by 3 things. 2 of them will return after his burial and only 1 will remain with him. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that his relatives, his property, and his deeds will go with him to the burial. And what's going to return? 2 things return. What are they? His relatives and his property. And what remains? His deeds. And so why am I mentioning this hadith right now? Is because one of the things that can help you disassociate from wealth is realizing that on the day that you get buried into this ground, it's not coming with you. What is going to come with you is your attitude towards it. And whether or not you used it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in good deeds, or whether or not you deluded yourself into thinking this was somehow because of your own doings, or you used it to harm people, or you used it in haram ways, right? So one of the first ways that we can help to cure ourselves from this disease is to remember death, is to remember the akhirah, is to remember that there's going to be a day where literally all the money that's sitting in your bank account right now, is just going to disappear. There is no worth to it. There is no weight to it. It does nothing for you at that point. The next thing that we can do to remedy our heart of this is this concept in Islam which is called qana'a, or contentment. And the Rasul ﷺ says in a hadith, لَيْسَ الْغِنَى عَنْ كَثْرَةِ الْعَرَض وَلَكِنَّ الْغِنَى غِنَى النَّفْسِ, which translates to, wealth is not in having a lot of stuff or having a lot of material things, but rather true wealth is feeling sufficient in your heart. Is feeling that sense of contentment. Is that idea that, and I alluded to this earlier, where I am able to look at all of the things that Allah has given me and to feel like that is enough. And to tune out anything outside of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me, and to just really be able to hyper focus on, well, Allah gave me all of these things. And this ties into the concept of gratitude, shukr. When we are people who can practice gratitude constantly, it can help to undo this disease of greed. Because when we practice gratitude, we are constantly bringing to the forefront of our mind all of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. So when you fill your thoughts, well, Allah gave me this, thank you ya Allah. Allah gave me this, thank you ya Allah. When some other thought, external thought comes to you from social media or from comparison or from whatever is the case, your brain is able to be like, no, wait a minute. Alhamdulillah, I've been thinking about this all day long. I know, I remember all of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me. So this concept of qana'a, this concept of contentment, being able to look at yourself and your situation and to truly convince yourself that that is enough for you and that that is the decree of Allah for you. And to be able to say, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is someone whom I trust. Therefore, I know that if He didn't give me this thing that I really, really, really want right now, then there must be khair in that for me. And if Allah didn't give me that job that I've been working my entire life for, or didn't give me that degree, or whatever is the case, then I trust Allah enough to be able to say, there must not have been good in that for me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must have something better in store. And for us to be able to say, when I see a person who has something that I wished I had, think of the story of Qarun. To be able to remind yourself, well, here are all the things that Allah has given me that that person may not have. And to find contentment in that. So that's the concept of qana'a. The more that we're able to practice that, the better you will be at kicking out greed from your heart. The second thing, or the third thing, is being able to give your money in charity. And in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about how sadaqah is meant to purify our heart. Sadaqah is meant to make our heart more clean. And it's kind of counterintuitive, right? You would think that in order for me to accumulate more wealth, then I should hold on to it, right? I shouldn't be just like spending it all over the place and giving it all away, right? But subhanAllah, in the hadith, Rasulullah says, مَا نَقَصَ مَالٌ مِّن صَدَقَةٍ. That money that you give in sadaqah does not actually decrease. So you have to have certainty. I am giving $50 out of my bank account to this charitable cause, and I am certain that my account is not $50 less. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in another ayah in the Quran, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. Again, tying in the concept of gratitude. That if you are grateful for the things that you have, then Allah will surely increase you. So it's like Allah is giving us formulas for, okay, you want a lot of money? Society tells you do it this way, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, well, if you want a lot of money, give it away. Give it away in charity and see how your risk multiplies. Or if you want more things, be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and see how your things multiply. It's like the equation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And then another thing that can help you to remedy your heart, and this is something that's really important, is to make sure that you surround yourself by people who remind you of Allah and remind you of your true purpose in this life. And I'm not saying your friends can't have cool cars, that's fine. But make sure that your friends with the cool cars know that the car ain't coming with them to the grave. And that person can remind you of that. And that person is not going to put you in a chase for more and more and more. And that person is not going to influence you to buy the next new thing, right? That person is going to keep you grounded. Hey, alhamdulillah for everything that we have. Hey, let's go do adhkar together. Let's go to the masjid together. Somebody who is going to influence you to do positive. Someone who can help you dissociate from the dunya and all the things of the dunya that a person may desire. Now I'll give you some Islamic examples. I'll give you one for the sake of time, of people who do this really, really, really well. The best example I could probably give is Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu. He's one of the companions that was known for his generosity. He was the type of guy that whenever there was a cause for the sake of Allah, and he was wealthy, he would always give everything that he had for it. For example, in the Battle of Tabuk, Uthman bin Affan single-handedly financed the entire battle. Think of how much money is spent in wars today, millions. Okay? Uthman bin Affan was able to provide for an entire battle on his own. Like, he paid all of his money towards that. And there are multiple other examples of his ability to do that. But this concept, the thing that makes us different from the Sahaba is that when they gave their wealth for the sake of Allah, they weren't scared. We're scared. We're genuinely afraid that if I give it, then I'm not going to have it and it's not coming back. But for them, they had no fear, and they did not waver in their faith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to take care of them. Another story I'll give you is the story of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. He was also known to be very wealthy, also known to give all of his wealth for the sake of Islam. During the time of Hijrah, Abu Bakr and Rasul traveled, right, from Mecca to Medina. What did Abu Bakr leave behind for his family? Nothing. Not a single penny was left behind for his family. Can you imagine? Ladies, can you imagine if your husband told you, hey, I donated everything for the sake of Allah and there's nothing left for you? How would you feel? Most of us would be freaking out, right? What are we going to do? How are the kids going to school? How are we going to eat, right? They didn't have that. They didn't freak out. Why? Because their attachment was to Allah, not to the money, not to the thing of the dunya. They knew that Allah was always going to be there. And as long as Allah is always there, then I'm good. All of these other things of the dunya are fleeting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in an ayah in the Quran, مَا عِنْدَكُمْ يَنْفَدُ وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بَاقٍ. That what is with you will perish. All of the things of this dunya will perish. All of these things that we hyper-focus on and spend so much energy striving for, one day are not going to be there, literally. Literally, it will not be there. But what is with Allah, that's the only thing that remains. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself will always remain. So being able to disconnect and kind of unplug our heart from something of the dunya that's gonna leave. Imagine you're literally putting your strength and your backbone is something that's gonna break. And you know it's gonna break. You know the bank account's gonna break. You know the people in your life that you depend on are one day not gonna be here. You know that career is not gonna be there forever. You know that car is not gonna be here forever, right? But we're putting all of our eggs in the basket of something that will not remain. Like, it sounds kind of silly, right? But because of the way this dunya is designed, it's really hard to see that for what it is. So that's the difference from us and the companions. That's the difference between us and the people of Gaza as well, right? Their ability to just completely disconnect, and as long as I have Allah, that is more than what I need. That's the way they think. All right, let me end with the psychology part of this all. Oh, actually, I'm gonna say a hadith, and then we'll talk about the psychology part. This hadith ties in beautifully everything I just said. The Rasul says, and this is, by the way, part of a very long hadith, so I'm only taking the end of it, so it's not the entire hadith. But the Rasul says, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ مَا أَصَابَكَ لَمْ يَكُنْ لِيُخْطِئَكَ وَمَا أَخْطَأَكَ لَمْ يَكُنْ لِيُصِيبَكَ وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ النَّصْرَ مَعَ الصَّبْرِ وَأَنَّ الْفَرَجَ مَعَ الْكَرْبِ وَأَنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. And that translates to, and know with certainty that what has passed you was never meant to come towards you. That what passed you up of opportunities, of things that you thought you wanted, what passed you up was never meant to come to you. And what is coming for you is never going to pass you by. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has destined for you is coming, whether you like it or not. And the things that you want for yourself may or may not come, depending on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, right? And then he says, and know that victory comes with patience, and know that relief comes with affliction, and know that with hardship there is ease. Which is another reminder that nothing is ever permanent. If you are in a financial difficulty now, at one point, inshallah, it won't be. If you're in happiness now, at one point, it won't be. There are no statuses in this world that are ever the same. You're always going to oscillate between I have, I don't. I have, I don't. I have, I don't. So if you know that the world is already set up to be that way, then you can learn to connect yourself with the thing that's always going to be there, as opposed to falling into the psychological and emotional harm of being attached to, oh, I'm here. Oh, no, I'm not. Oh, no, I'm here. It's like a toxic relationship, right? Hey, I'm here. I love you so much. JK, no, I don't. Hey, I'm here. I love you so much. JK, no, I don't, right? Think about how we think about that type of relationship and how all of us are looking for the stable, steady relationship that's consistent. That stable, steady relationship is the one that's with Allah. It's the only one that is steady and stable, right? So now let's do a psychological twist on this all. What does psychology have to say about all the things that Islam says? So remember that hadith I told you guys earlier about that if the son of Adam were to have a valley of gold, that he would always wish for 2 valleys of gold, and that nothing would ever satisfy him except for dust, meaning he's never going to be satisfied until the day he's buried literally into the ground, into the dust. There's actually a psychological principle that confirms that to be true. Anybody here know psychology? Because you can correct me on the way I'm saying this. It is called the hedonic treadmill. Did I say that right? Anybody? Okay, I'm going to assume I said it right. The hedonic treadmill. It's this idea, psychologically proven, that no matter how much we have, our happiness is always quickly going to return to baseline, which means that, let's say you've been striving for this new car, you finally have the new car, you're going to be happy with that car for like a week or two, and then you're just going to return back to your normal baseline. It's part of the way the brain works. Our brain kind of functions in such a way that you're never actually like 100% satisfied with something. You're always going to go back to your normal mood, your baseline. More about psychology. Studies show that people who focus too much on wealth or on possessions actually report lower levels of life satisfaction. They are not happy with their life. The people with the most feel the crappiest about themselves. And then it also talks about how they also report more anxiety and more weak relationships with people. Okay. And then this concept of gratitude is backed by psychology a lot, that practicing gratitude has been shown to increase long-term happiness by about 25%, which is more than most antidepressants. I'm going to say that again. Practicing gratitude has been shown to increase long-term happiness by about 25%, more than most antidepressants. Which means that if we can just get ourselves to do what Allah already commanded us to do long ago, to do what the Rasul already taught us to do long ago, just do your adhkar, your morning adhkar, your evening adhkar, your after salah adhkar. In all of those adhkars, there's an alhamdulillah somewhere in there. There's a concept of being able to slow down and think about the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me. Doing that alone will allow you to reach happiness. So the question is, does money equal happiness? No. Gratitude equals happiness. Being thankful for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. Not, even if He doesn't give you any more than what you already have. If you're just able to be grateful for what you already have, that is what increases your happiness. And then the last point that ties in with psychology is this concept of charity, giving it. We kind of talked about how, in a way, it's counterintuitive, that if I want my wealth to increase, does it make sense for me to keep it or give it? Islam tells us to give it. Psychology tells us, and there was a study that was done by Princeton, a Princeton study, talks about how people who spent money on other people reported greater happiness than those who spent it only on themselves. And then the last thing is this. I thought this one was kind of cool. Another study found that once a person's basic needs are met, earning more money does not make them any happier beyond $75,000 a year. This study was in 2010, so I bet that number might be different now. But the point is, there is no ceiling on it. Once your basic needs are met, more money does not equal more happiness. As long as you have the basic things that you need, additional wealth, additional stuff, bigger parties, bigger weddings, bigger whatever, does not actually lead you to become more happy. So greed is not just a spiritual disease, it's actually a psychological trap. Like if you fall into this, you will psychologically be unwell for a long time. And gratitude is not just something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to do, but it is also proven psychologically to be something that holds the key to true happiness. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among people who can rid ourselves of this disease if we find it in our heart. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy for us to be people who can be content with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be people who can tune out any noise that comes from others around us. And for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring that wealth to be in our heart, that regardless of anything that we may have in front of us, that we still feel the wealth of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.